I'm actually going to remember to record today. And I hope everybody is doing well. And we have some more people joining us. But first off, I just would like to welcome everybody to our space. We're on our fifth Eat, Learn, and Grow with Tinhorn. And these webinars are a gift from Tinhorn, and I'd just like to remind everybody that in the face of unfolding circumstances just related to COVID-19, that we at Tinhorn were beyond grateful to our team, our clients, and our community for your continued support, and we remain committed to the betterment of our tribal communities. We are driven to ignite Indigenous connections, which has remained consistent from the beginning of our operations to today, even during these unusual times. So we're looking at realizing this vision and adjusting during our unusual times by we're changing our training methods to an online platform, such as what we're doing today. And we also are continuing to connect our Indigenous communities, and for now, that is through these weekly led Eat, Learn, and Grow with Tinhorn webinars. And we will continue to provide updates on our websites and social pages. And please let us know how we can continue to support you through our, by requesting a complimentary consultation about your website. And if you don't have a website and you need one, we definitely can help you with that. And if there is someone in your circle who needs help, especially I think about our native businesses who may not have an online presence, please refer them to Tinhorn. So now that we have our sponsored message out of the way, I would like to talk about our topic today. And you know, today's world, it's ever changing. There's whether we look at it as a time of awakening or a time of uncertainty. On today's session, we'd really like to focus on how we can be resilient. And that would be by preparing for the worst, but always hoping for the best. And RJ Huskey and I have had multiple conversations on this topic pre-COVID-19. So it's interesting that it has special significance now in our times of uncertainty. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce RJ and just would like to share with you all that our format today is going to be a little bit different. We're going to take it from one of my mentors. She doesn't know it, but Oprah. So we're going to have more of a conversation style today. And I'm pleased, RJ, that you're sharing your gift with all of us. And RJ Huskey, he is Dene, and he's a seasoned IT professional, volunteer, and mentor. He is in the Master of Engineering program in Cybersecurity Policy and Compliance at the George Washington University, where he's a candidate for that degree. And he holds a Bachelor's of Science in American Political Systems from Northern Arizona University. How many lumberjacks do we have on the call? Oh, surprise. Well, I'll raise my hand for my mom. RJ will share his personal experience and about how he helped his family proactively manage crisis and the lessons that we can help our families prepare for in these uncertain times. So, like we said, we're all being affected in this time of change. So let's talk, share, connect, and learn how to plan for the best. RJ, I'd like to hand it over to you now.
Hey, thank you, April. You said it was the first of the month, and I think you forgot the big one. It's payday for a lot of people.
Hey, if you get checks on the regular like that, how many of my business owners can empathize with that not having a significance anymore?
Well, I'll meet you at the casino later.
Hey, I heard there's a 3 a.m. one going on Facebook somewhere. Seriously.
Well, I need to get into the know, so so I can have some fun. So so the first thing I wanted to talk about was resilience. What does it mean? With me being a candidate for my master's program, I'm in the cybersecurity program at GW. We go through a lot of discussions about planning for the worst. In cybersecurity, you think data breaches, you think privacy, you think of the worst. It affects people, it affects organizations like governments, it can affect businesses of all sizes. So really, the theme out of it is being prepared. So I wanted I put together a slide here to go over, to share with you here. Let me open this up here.
Okay, you'll need to share your screen first, RJ.
Okay. Let me see, how do I do that?
At the bottom, in bottom middle, there's a share screen button.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It's a learning time, I think, for all of us. So for those of us who are learning Zoom, if you're ever needing to share on your screen, you can hover your mouse at the very bottom of the black screen, and you'll see that there's a bunch of different icons that have actions associated with them. And hey, thumbs up from Katasha. I see Will on here, Kina, Marty, Glenda. All right, so you didn't know this, but for your entertainment, we just had a magic act. RJ was here, and now on the count of 3, he's gonna reappear. Are you back with us, RJ? You're muted as well.
Okay, sorry about that. I was joking this morning about age, or maybe some of this is insanity that comes along with being locked up in this time with COVID-19. So apologize for that. So let me get this going here. So what I wanted to talk to you about was, you can see on the screen here, the business resiliency. Okay.
Yes.
So what I wanted to talk to you about is a business concept. So we talk a lot about the planning. The business continuity plan is a plan that's intended to help organizations really navigate the storm. So right now we're kind of in midst of this pandemic. This is our storm. For a lot of organizations, they really haven't thought too much about pandemics because the focus is, data breaches. What do I do in the event that, things go sour? So for a small business, it's about ensuring that you have what you need to minimize your operations to the critical business functions to help you survive. So survival is really the key word in this. And out of this concept, I wanted to apply this to our personal lives. So, this large concept, how can we become more resilient? So I provided an example here of financial resiliency. So before COVID-19, I don't know how much of you guys subscribe to any of these services, but put your mind into the shoes of a consumer that might be subscribing to Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, HBO. So all of those services come at a cost. And during normal times, you might pay for it and not think twice about it. But during a pandemic, cash is king, and cash is always king. You talk to the accountants, they're going to say, have as much available cash on hand as you can. So here, to navigate the storm, somebody could downsize. So they get rid of all the services that they don't need, and this person just decides, hey, I'm gonna go with Amazon Prime because I get the free shipping, and I also get the benefit of the free videos. So out of that, they still get what they want. They get the entertainment. It's the bare minimum for them, but now they have a lot more money in their pocket to survive the storm. So that's kind of the concept behind what we're doing here. So I, wanted to remind, I guess, or say that, what I'm talking about isn't legal guidance, and I want to share my personal story about resiliency. So a couple of years ago, my dad was sick. He was in hospice care, and that conversation came about what's going to happen. You know, for a lot of Navajos in particular, it's the yeah, you know, you don't talk about that. It's a conversation that we all avoid. We tap dance around it, and you know, when it does happen, we're scrambling. Fortunately for me, I was a pre-law major at NAU, and as part of my curriculum, we had to go through several courses around the legal system. In particular, it was around planning for the worst. So some of the exercises we did were really around the living wills and were around the durable healthcare power of attorneys. These documents are needed in order to talk to medical providers, to make some decisions proactively for yourself. But it also, depending on the document, you can use it to empower your loved one to make decisions if you're not able to. So why are we talking about it? We're talking about it because we're in this pandemic, and there's a lot of examples that are popping up of families that have lost several of their loved ones. I myself, I've have very close friends, a number of close friends that have contracted COVID-19. And in some of these examples, they were fine on a Tuesday, and by Saturday, they're on life support. And it happened so fast. So when I spoke to April about this, you know, the conversation was like, well, how can we, you know, apply, you know, some of what you're learning into what's happening during this pandemic? So thus we're all here. So I guess some of the questions that you might ask is like, how have I been resilient through that? So I just provided that example, and what it boils down to is just having an honest conversation with your family. As comfortable or uncomfortable as it may be, somebody has to start the conversation. It's sitting them down at the dinner table and just saying, hey, you know what, we really need to talk about what we should do. How do we plan around circumstances that might happen? And keep in mind that it's not always about you know, life or death, because you know, that's the worst. But there's a lot that can happen in middle of it. And you know, some of the things that come to mind, you know, as a cybersecurity student, we talk about the communications, we talk about the finances. You know, let me start the communications being, you know, who do we need to contact during an emergency? For a family, it's going to be, you know, if both parents are sick, if there's a trusted loved one, who is that trusted loved one? Who should the kids be in contact with, or the hospital be in contact with? It could be your employer. If you're single, living alone, who's checking on you? You know, how do you start some of those conversations to make sure that you're not in a jam? From a financial perspective, it's about being prepared. Like, what do we need to cut out of our budget to survive and navigate the storm? It could also be looking at all the documentation, like what happens if we're evacuated? Some of these families out on Navajo, when they're testing positive, they have to go to isolation in one of the gymnasiums. So some of these individuals might still want to get on Facebook or, you know, be social, but you know, they might still need to do things like normal. And so, you know, what documents do they need to have on hand to pay their bills, you know, mobilely? So you think about some of those situations there, you know, apply it in your mind of like what makes sense to you. I also think along the lines of insurance. You know, IHS covers a lot of us, but you know, what happens if your significant other doesn't know your tribal ID and you're trying to get care at IHS? You know, and it's some of those basic questions that I think can get really lost during the commotion. So, which is why the planning is so important. It's just getting prepared so that way, if you're grieving or if you're not able, you already have a plan in place. And hopefully it's ironclad and it can withstand a lot of different situations. The third one here is, thinking about your pets. Pets have to have their food. Some have medications that they need to take. But who do they go to in the event that there's an emergency with you? Do they have a kennel that they go to? Who's their favorite, or I'm sorry, who's their veterinarian? But thinking about the care about your pets is also should be a part of the plan. From a small business perspective, it's thinking about how does the business navigate the storm. There's a number of resources available that I'll walk through here on the slide, and this is going to be the last of the slides, by the way. And there's another example here with small business for cybersecurity. So that's what the essence of this conversation is about. So let me go ahead and
RJ. So I was thinking about a conversation we had that I also had with another friend last night. And as natives, a lot of us, our families, extended families, are still back home on our respective reservations. And so part of the communications plan, would that also include talking to our extended family if an emergency happens? Like, where do we all meet?
Oh, absolutely. So let me take this opportunity to go into this really quick. All right, let me know when you can see my screen. So what I did here, you can see it? Okay, so what I did here was I gathered resources from FEMA. So I wanted to ensure that the audience has the most amount of information coming out of this session, and information that has been tested, that's accurate, and gives you enough to think about in your personal circumstances. And FEMA did a lot of the legwork for us. So this is the communication plan that they put together. There's some steps here about documents that you should collect, how you share the document, socialize it amongst yourselves, like your family, how to practice the plan, and also how to keep it safe, because these plans will have a lot of vital information or critical information that you really don't want to have an attacker get. Thinking about if you print this off and somebody breaks into your house and they get a hold of this plan, you want to make sure that doesn't happen, because if there's account numbers or whatever, you want to keep this safe. So let me scroll down here. This does provide a checklist to answer your question here. Meeting places is a part of this. So I know there was a gentleman last week from Oklahoma. Tornadoes is right up his alley. Excuse the pun. But for here in Phoenix, we don't think about natural disasters a lot. But out north on Navajo, there's a lot of floods. And I think, we don't really, at least when I lived up on Navajo, we didn't really talk about what do we do. And these days, it should be a part of the conversation. If you get evacuated from your neighborhood, for example, where do you go? Where do you meet? Do you meet at the local Trader Joe's? Do you meet at the school? Ask yourself some of those questions. So let me scroll down here, because this is a really long checklist.
And another thing that we had talked about, we're talking about multi-generational families. We're talking about physical distances, maybe spanning states, but also there's another side of it too. How about for folks that, are, for whatever reason, they may be weathering out this physical distancing by themselves. And RJ and I had a conversation about that. And in normal times, like if you didn't show up for work, or your friend, you would see people, and if you weren't showing up, there would be these natural checkpoints where people would check on you. But now that we're in this time of physical distancing, it's easy, I think, to fall through the cracks. So, like, for instance, I asked RJ to be my COVID-19 buddy. And I was like, if you don't see or hear from me in 2 or 3 days, because I'm pretty active on social at least, it's like, call, check on me, make sure I'm okay. And then we talked about even that would be, he's like, well, who would I call? And I think that's also part of the check-in plan as well. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's really the essence of it. So, April's situation is she's living alone, and what does she do in the event that something were to happen to her? Who's checking on her? And in that person that checks on her, who do we call? So it's not just having the buddy, but what is the action that you want your buddy to take for you? And a lot of us have family back out on different or in different communities, and that's actually works really in our favor when you look at some of the planning, because again, cybersecurity, we think of the worst, but if there's an entire family that is affected by, say, COVID-19, and there's nobody there, you want to have somebody offsite that is the contact. You think of your relative in another town or maybe another state, but somebody, or even a close friend. There's you can customize the plan however you want to, however it fits. So this here, FEMA gives you a fillable form, so you just plug it in and you print it off. It's really that easy. You go through the form. It asks about household information, name, mobile, social media, email, other important medical information. Say you have diabetes, because diabetes runs rampant on the reservation. That person that's your point of contact might want to know that, to communicate that to a medical provider that, hey, they need assistance with their medical needs. So here I would encourage everyone not to go into a lot of details, but enough to communicate if there isn't an emergency that you're not able to communicate. For those that have kids, yeah, think about your childcare, the child giver. Where's the pickup point for your kids? Who do they go to? Who's the point of contact for those child care providers? So you thinking along those lines, it's not just what's in your family, but kind of thinking from a larger perspective, like if something were to really happen, and we're kind of in the middle of it right now, to be honest with you, how do we work around it, and how do we survive this? FEMA asks for, in case of emergency contact or an ICE contact, and this could be your somebody locally. If you have a significant other or a close friend in town, you can list that, and the out of contact goes here. So meeting places, we already discussed that. So it provides a couple of options to think about where you can meet. Now, here's kind of what I started with, or was leading with, about having information about like your insurance, etc. But you should list out important phone numbers. A really good example of this is you think about like the flooding that happened in Austin a couple of years ago. A lot of people, like, that flood happened so fast and they didn't have time to get out. But if you have to go in a hurry, you're not gonna, you could even forget your phone, and you're gonna be scrambling for phone numbers. Like, how do I call the police department to check on my house because my dog is still there? So listing out the phone number can be really important, or even the phone number to the fire department. Poison control, listing out your doctor's phone numbers can be really important. I think the example here is that if you are the one that is affected by COVID-19, and your friend is trying to communicate that to the doctor, well, the provider that is seeing you for COVID-19 would want to contact your primary care doctor, so that way they understand what the treatment plan is going to be. Pediatrician for kids, dentist, pharmacy is really important. The medical insurance, listing the phone number to your insurance carrier and just the account number, or I'm sorry, the policy number, can help solve a lot of problems and some of that headache. So, because I don't know about you guys, but I always lose my card. I do everything by the phone, and I don't even follow my own advice here. So I need to, spend some time looking at my own plan, so it's all in place. Your homeowner rental insurance. So again, I'm thinking about the flooding in Austin. So if your house was flooded, you're going to want to contact the insurance company to let them know that you're affected, and give them the policy number. There's some fields here for your veterinarian, your kennel, your utility companies, and that's the whole communication plan. So it's pretty thorough. And it goes through, all these different scenarios, and you can spend some time going through the document yourself, filling it out, because I'll provide this slide as a takeaway for the audience.
Yeah, and RJ, I would say, adding to what you said is, once we even put together our communication plan, we need to share it with somebody so they know where it's at. My mom and I were talking recently, and so she was telling me like where her lockbox key is at, where her will's located, and I knew she had them because we've had a conversation, but she hadn't told me how to find them. And so I think that's another step, is they can exist, but someone also needs to know how to access them.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Along those lines, I was in a bank just as businesses were starting to shut down and everything. And they were talking about how they, different branches were shutting down and only certain branches were going to be open. And that they had various customers coming in to retrieve passports and things like that from safe deposit boxes. So that's just, another random thing to think about. To the extent that you're using outside resources to store your key documents in crisis, you need copies of them or something around in case that happens and you can't access them.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really important point. I think there's some people that use lockboxes. I've never used one, but FEMA actually provides a site where you can upload all your documents. It's an encrypted site, so it's secure. It's provided in the documentation, I believe, for the communication plan. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay, so if it's not in the communication plan, I do know that it's in the financial prep plan. So maybe this is a good segue to kind of go off what we're talking about, because we're talking about banking and that's money. So finances, is really important during a pandemic or an emergency. You might need cash on hand, gas money, food, buying extra clothes, whatever it might be. So FEMA provides a number of preparedness tips here. And what I'm pointing the audience to is actually this emergency financial first aid kit. So FEMA provides this kit to help you plan ahead for your financial disaster. So, this is kind of one of their examples of, a home being destroyed. So let's scroll down here. So there's lots of tips. So here we go. So having information about your household, your legal documentation. Earlier, I referenced the living will and the power of attorney. That's a part of the documentation. Custody of your kids, that could be an important legal artifact. Medical information, household contacts. So FEMA here put together a checklist of all the documents that you should have together in your kit that's ready to go. So, driver's license, making a photocopy of it. What if that gets lost? Birth certificates. One of the things that I do have to say about these documents is that they're really not tailored toward Indian audiences. So for us, having a physical address on Navajo, we don't have them. So, drawing out the address to your home, you can do that as an attachment to the document.
Or even GPS coordinates, something that could be helpful as well. I know there's GPS mapping parts in Navajo.
Your CIB, because CIB is not included in this checklist, but that's a part of our verification documents. So you can see here, there's a lot of information that is complementary to the communication plan. It's just taking it a step further so you can get your finances in order. And for a small business, you also have to be thinking about the business, because that's another big baby that you got to take care of. You're thinking about your business insurance, who do you call, your customer list, those can be really important things that you need during an emergency.
Yeah, like that's a good point, because I don't know about any of the other business owners, but if you've been applying for any of the emergency loans or grants out there, all of them seem to be asking for, you know, your financials, your articles of incorporation, just all these documents. Like even I think the PPP loan was asking for a certificate of good standing, and up until then I had never heard of one. So it's almost like doing a good housekeeping of your business, to almost like these checklists that we have for that RJ's been sharing for us personally about us as a person, but we also need to keep our records handy and accessible for our business.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just show you guys here, because one of my goals in this conversation was just to familiarize everyone with the resources, not to put everyone to sleep. I'm really good at that. So here, this resource is provided by SBA, the Small Business Administration. So where you want to go is this cybersecurity plan here. So I was really, really excited about this one. You can tell I'm a real nerd when it comes to cybersecurity, because I was like excited enough that I called April. I was like, April, like, this is good for you.
Yeah.
So they link over to FCC, and this is really cool because all you need to do is plug in your business name. Let's call it Pubby, you know, and your city. We'll say Phoenix, you know, we'll say Arizona. So what this does here is it provides you an option to select and drop all the necessary parts of your plan that you want to have, and it generates the plan for you. So when you're done selecting all the elements, all you need to do is hit the button, and now you have a plan. So if you need to provide a plan to your insurance company, because they might be asking for what's your plan to navigate this storm for your small business, because we're not going to insure you if you don't have something in place. This can supplement for some of that documentation, but more importantly, there's questions in here that you should go through, just making sure everything is you know, checked out, that you're going to navigate this storm. One of the things that we're looking at in the cybersecurity world is all these security threats that are happening. So Zoom is one of them. There's been a break within the encryption. They weren't using the proper encryption. So a lot of these recordings or sessions that were happening in small businesses, proprietary information, it's all been leaked. So there's a patch to this vulnerability for Zoom, but it's happening everywhere. And you want to make sure that your small business is really prepared to deal with this storm. There's, you know, we have a lot of downtime during the pandemic, so this is a good chance for you to do some house cleaning.
Yeah, that's a great segue and I guess a taste for cybersecurity, because I know when we went to a conference, like a 3-day conference, that was nothing but cybersecurity. So that is definitely a in-depth topic unto its own. So to keep the conversation moving, RJ, I wanted to ask you, so what was your experience like talking with your family about end-of-life decisions? Because we had talked about really wanting to get into how in our communities, like death is, I feel like the topic of death is something that we collectively are sort of in denial about. Like, we all know it's happening, but we don't talk about it, and we only deal with it after the person is gone. I think that's apparent today, because if any of you are on social media platforms, how many GoFundMe pages have you seen for you know, burial assistance? And so that's one of the major intents of this presentation, was to help you start these conversations with your loved ones. So RJ, how did you start this conversation with your loved ones?
So I familiarized myself with the documents. I actually printed them out. I wanted to know what was on the form before I addressed them, because I know this is a really sensitive topic. took a really deep breath, several deep breaths before I went and talked to them. This was following a seizure that my dad had. And the seizure was bad enough that he stopped breathing. So it was one of those parts where like, oh, we could have really lost him. And they were visiting from Black Mesa, which is on the northern part of Navajo. So they're used to IHS and, things just kind of are taken care of for them. And I think that things are a little bit more casual, but down here, we weren't able to talk to the doctors. They wouldn't give us any information. We had to go through my mom. It was kind of a headache. So after he got released, and that's when I presented the documents, and I was like, hey, Dad, like we could have lost you. And we need to be empowered to make decisions or, know what your wishes are if this were to happen again. And it's like, I know we don't really want to talk about this, but if we don't do it, we could be doing more harm for ourselves. And so I was like, if you don't mind, like, let's just work through it. And so they agreed. It was my dad, my mom, and myself. And we went through the form, and it was a really emotional conversation. Like we were, crying and almost fighting. My mom's is Navajo, so she has to fight. So like, guess what? I'm Navajo too, so I'm gonna fight back. So we, went through the form. Here in Arizona, they provide a form that you need to fill out, and it makes it really easy. And the living will is a legal document that allows you to outline your desires with regard to your medical treatment. So, you make decisions proactively for yourself. So, and you also will designate someone here in the form, but it kind of talks about it here. It's really simple. You make decisions about your own end of life care. Do you want comfort care only, or, you don't want to be on life support? It talks about all of that. So you make those decisions on your behalf, and at the end of it, you sign off on this. You sign off on it, and the important part of this, in my opinion, is making sure that you're not signing it at home. You have to get this signed by a notary public. So, I learned this in the process, but a lot of banks, I bank at Chase Bank, and they provide notary services for free. So, just going over there, have them sign off on the document for you. It gets this taken care of. And the next part of that was the durable healthcare power of attorney. So this one here is a different document, and what it empowers is somebody else to make decisions on your behalf. So the first document is you make decisions for yourself. The second one is you're designating someone to make decisions for you. So if you're not married, if you're an adult, your parents can't make decisions for you. So this is where this becomes important. And it goes through really the same lines of questions, but one of the things here is that you want to make sure that you have a conversation with the person that is going to make those decisions for you, that you get their permission, because it's a heavy permission. The form actually allows you to designate up to 2 people. So, I don't want to make this a sad conversation, but, when my dad's time came to take him off life support, my mom didn't have the emotional strength to do it. So with us having this form, I had to make that decision for my dad. We came to a family consensus, and I spoke to the doctors and got everything going. So, I was 34 at the time. It wasn't the responsibility I wanted, but I also understood like this is life.
Yes.
And I'm really, really, really glad that we went through it, to be honest with you. This COVID-19 conversation, I brought this back up to my mom, and before I even said we should start talking about it, my mom brought up the living will. She said, we should do that again, because that was so helpful with Dad. I was like, yeah. And I'm really glad that she did that, because it made it really easy, and she saw the value in this. So, you can go through it yourself. There's a lot of things that you can, decisions that you can make proactively to help your loved one through the process.
Can I add something? You were talking about fighting earlier with your family. So I'm an only child. So these decisions aren't as complicated. I don't have a ton of other people to have to consult about things, but both of my parents are still living. And a few years ago, my mom came out here from Oklahoma for a really serious surgery. And so I'd filled out all these forms and got them all ready to go. And, you know, we had the conversation. And she was having a brain surgery, so things weren't functioning right already. And it was just overwhelming her. And I mean, she's great at pre-planning. She's the planner in the family, but she wasn't where she needed to be. And, you know, we'd gone through the living will first, and they've had long-term wills and things for years. And then when we got to the durable power of attorney, that's where she started shutting down. But we knew it was just my dad and me. We were going to be able to probably come to consensus on decisions that needed to be made. But when we went to the hospital to do all of her registrations, because we had already had those conversations, it made those easier, because the hospitals are all going to ask you these same questions too. And so we sort of knew where she was. We could guess and fill in outlines around the rest of it. And if, God forbid, you know, my dad had broken down in any of that, and I, like you, found myself in the position of having to make those decisions because we'd had the conversations, you could sort of guess where things were going. And so even if your family gets in a fight about this, hopefully the damage is repairable, but you've started the conversation. And that's, I think, really useful.
Yeah, that's a really important point. So I'm not an attorney, but I know a lot of families, unfortunately, litigate in these circumstances. They sue each other, you know, over property, over, you know, what should have been done, because somebody had some conversation with somebody, you know, it hurt feelings, and it's really avoidable, avoidable if you proactively talk about these things. I know April mentioned that she did a living will with her mom as well. How did you address that with your mom, April?
So it was kind of a two-part time-space conversation that happened accidentally on purpose, I suppose. The first was I used to work for Phoenix Area Indian Health Service, and I was in this presentation where they talked about end-of-life care. And they presented this form called 5 Wishes, which you can still buy online. I think it's like $5 a copy, and we'll include all this information. We're going to email it out to the group afterwards, but it was called 5 Wishes. And what I really liked about it, it was, I believe Winona was asking, how do we begin these conversations? And so one tip I would share that helped me was having that 5 Wishes form with me. And it helps you talk with, in this instance, my mom, it could be my husband, but it's like near the end of your life, how do you envision it? Because I never knew that we had choices. I'd not seen that in my experience as, you know, a Hualapai growing up. I just knew that when you passed away, no one talked about it. And then there was a wake, because we do, you know, wakes. You go there, you cry, you know, the loudest crier is the one who loved you the most type of thing. There's usually no wills. And for large families like my mom's, once my grandma passed away, it split our whole family tree. And it's like the older kids who were full Hualapai versus the younger kids who were half Chinese. Like in our family, it's never been the same, because it came down to who was getting what of her things. And that's all avoidable, but we deny that death is going to happen, and it's just a part of life. So the 5 Wishes document helped me have that conversation. And I think it really, honestly, it first begins with ourselves. Like I filled it out for me, and I didn't know that I had choices about what my end of life could be like. And an example I saw, it said they had a celebration of life instead of a funeral. And like the person was a Prince fan, there was Prince music, everything was purple, and it was a party. So that's something to think about. And it's also, you can talk about your loved ones. Another really sensitive topic that came in that 5 Wishes document was about DNR, do not resuscitate. You know, at the end, I asked my mom, I was like, if it comes to that, what do you want to do? And so, you know, she filled out the documentation, and she said she did not want to be resuscitated. So we've had that conversation. It's been documented. We've shared it with my brother, so everybody knows her wishes. So much later in life, another opportunity came, and I think it was Phoenix Indian Center was doing some sort of clinic where they had college students come down, and they were offering free living will services. So I asked my mom, you know, my husband's grandfather of his family, a much larger family in Peach Springs, he passed away. And so we were going through the exact same thing 20 years later, where the whole family was fighting over grandpa's house. And you know, it's never about grandpa's house, right? It's always about the emotions tied to grandpa's house. So everyone from the grandkids to the oldest son, they were all, you know, however you deal with your grief, that was all being played out. And so I talked to my mom and I said, I was like, you know, you only have two kids, my brother Tyler and I. And I said, what I'm seeing is during times of death is that I would really like to be able to lean into my brother. I would like that we could be there for each other. I don't want to be fighting over your things. So the most loving thing you can do for us would be write a will, and you tell us who you want all your things to go to, and then share it with us while you're alive and, you know, able-minded. So she did. We had breakfast one day, and she sat there and she told every single person, from like my little, you know, 3-year-old niece, what jewelry, what Hualapai dolls she was getting, to my brother, you know, getting all the money. Okay, you know, and then I found out what I was getting. But that's a part of it too, is like I had to be open to hearing what she wanted. And it was really cool because at breakfast we were able to laugh with her, and it was real tense at first, but it was like it wasn't like most of, I think, our pain, you know, our sicknesses and our secrets. So it wasn't a secret. We weren't silent. We were talking about it. And the best part was hearing from my mom tell us all that she was at peace with whatever would happen, because she's like, I've lived a very full life. And if I were to go at any moment, I'm at peace. And she said, but I worry for you, my kids. That's the only thing I worry about in death, is if you all are okay once I pass away. So that's something that I would like to share about my experience. And so we do have living wills, my mother and myself and my husband. And so the other part though is we got to update them, like RJ was saying. So
yeah, I wanted to say though, after I did it, I felt a huge sense of relief. It was like, oh, I got done with it. And it was like great, because like they're still alive, so I still have time to enjoy with them.
Yes.
You know, so
yes.
it was a huge relief. So there's that benefit to it of just getting it done. The one last thing I wanted to share with you, let me put back up my screen again here. So this popped up on social media the other day, and I thought this was really important to share. So the Navajo Nation is trying to get everyone prepared for what the resources are if someone passes in the family due to COVID-19. So they've outlined really some resources, some guidelines, who to contact, the list of mortuaries, guidelines to what you need to do for all the different services, and the costs. So having some of these proactive conversations can help your family navigate this pandemic. It's kind of sad that we're here, but we're here.
And RJ, I definitely would like to thank you for sharing all the resources. I know there's more here. Like we said before, no one is an attorney. Well, neither he nor I are attorneys. This is just us sharing our personal experiences, and we definitely wanted to help other people to benefit from the experiences that we went through, because it is painful. It is a difficult conversation to have, but the payoff is, you know, some of the things that RJ said is that there's clarity, there's some relief. It's something that you talked about. It can even bring your families closer. So with the remaining time, I want to open it up, and whatever questions people may have, you can put it in the chat box if you're not comfortable in speaking. And so the floor is open. You know, we're talking about COVID-19. planning for the worst, hoping for the best.
Are there any attorneys on the line that
Yeah,
would
there are.
recommend anything? What would they recommend, the attorneys? Just curious.
Hi, this is Will. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. So I am an attorney, but I don't do any estate planning or wills, trust, and estates type work. But what I can say is my best recommendation is to speak with an attorney that specializes in those areas, because they can actually walk you through the process of getting a formal will in place, making sure that your business has the proper protections in place if you pass on and need to make sure that your family is taken care of. Those are issues that may not take very many sessions to sit down with an attorney to go over, but I think it's just worth getting a better understanding if you are going through those questions and need some of those answers.
And so I'm an attorney as well, and the thing that I would add to that is you may be afraid to have an attorney look at it. You know, I'm cheap. I'm a lawyer, so you know I've done some of these things for myself. But frankly, I've never hired anybody to actually look over it or draft me up something because I'm too cheap to do it. But I will say, having gone through that exercise, it would be important, I think, for you to go through that exercise so that if you do want an attorney to review that stuff, especially for a business, because small business owners really need to have that stuff in place. You've done most of the legwork. So even if you're hiring somebody by the hour, it's not going to take them as much time to review what you have and give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down or make a few suggestions or put it on their own form. Versus if they have to go through every single question with you step by step, that'll really churn your hours. And a lot of these things you can find people to do it at a set rate for you too. So you know, eyes wide open going in what you're getting into.
So thank you, cousin, for offering your services.
A.
old Indian trick.
I don't practice wills and estates.
Hey, April and RJ.
Hello?
April, this is Marty.
Hey, Marty. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. It's good to be with you again. I just,
Same here.
I wanted to give my strong endorsement for this conversation. RJ, thank you. It's been excellent. I heard a saying a long time ago that failing to plan is planning to fail. And you might have heard that as well. So it is a subject. The subject of death is something that we're not comfortable in talking about. But if those of you that were on last week's session know my story of experiencing an 18-month battle with my wife with cancer, and then losing her at 59 years old. And through that experience, I've learned so much. And one of the things I've learned is that even young people, I'm not too young. I'm almost 63. But I've met some 35-year-old widows and widowers, you know, so it can happen. So we need to do these things and plan and get comfortable talking about them. Just a couple of tips. I'm the older parent. You know, from a different perspective for those of you that are younger and wanting to talk to your parents. One idea is to, you know, find the occasion of a family funeral. That's, you know, maybe a little bit extended family, but use that occasion to speak to your parents about that inevitability. Because there are so many things in life that are inevitable, like death. And so we need to find our occasions to bring those up and talk about them and do the kind of planning. And it can be a very enriching experience. We were fortunate that we had 18 months of a cancer battle to get real about these kinds of things and have these conversations. And so I've had my 3 daughters express to me that the kind of preparation that I now have given to them, they experience it as a gift and they appreciate it. And then the last thing I'd say is update it, because every year, 2 years at most, things in life change, you know. And so all the you know, particulars of your plan, you know, will mostly be intact, but things do change, so you need to adapt to those. But thank you, RJ. It's great. Thank you again for letting me be here with you, April.
Always. Thank you for sharing your experience, Marty. And also as another segue to have this conversation is you can use today's gathering and say, you know, to your loved ones, like I was on a webinar today where we were talking about wills or, you know, end of life. I think that's a way to bring it up. Again, I think that 5 wishes document is an easy one to use as well. And I don't know about you all, but on my Facebook feed, I saw one called Mama Bear Will. And so it's an online solution to start, I guess, plug and playing your own will as well. But we're offering the beginnings of I think everything you offered so far is free, right, RJ? On that FEMA listing.
Yeah, everything is free.
And for those of us that are parents, the one thing I never thought about either was like, because, you know, natural progression of life, I would think that I'm going to go before my daughter, but it's also something to think about if I do go before her, or if she goes, no, I guess I'm sorry, it is a natural progression of life. Like if I were to pass away while she's still like a minor, there's also things to put in the will about, like, you know, different, first thing I think of is like her education, you know, healthcare, religion, and just different things I would want her, how I want her to be raised. And those are, I believe, directives that some of it can be included, and even just who would be her legal guardian. So just different things to think about.
Thank you, April. I do have to run,
okay.
But thank you for having me today, and thank you everybody for listening. Hopefully this is helpful.
Yep, and I will also include your LinkedIn handle if everybody would like to connect to each other. Just share that in the comments, and we can put that in the link as well. And no, RJ has asked that we share his LinkedIn handle. So with that, I think I want to thank you all for being courageous and being here. And again, I want to end on that we're hoping for the best, but it is good peace of mind to know that the preparations have begun. So thank you again for joining us on Eat, Learn, and Grow with Tinhorn. And we'll be back next Friday. So we'll see you then.
Thanks, April.
Take care. You're welcome. Have a good first of the month.
Thank you. That was really good. It was a difficult topic, but definitely needed to be discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
All right. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one. You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Have a good weekend.
See you. And you too.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next week.
We'll see you.
I was waiting to see if she got her card.
Oh, I don't even know. I haven't talked with them. So.
Oh, no, Lisa.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Lisa. Lisa, did you get your card? I think she's going because she said the mailman came, so she's gonna show us.
Oh, I actually need to jump off, so I'm gonna end the call. But you guys have a good day, all right? Thank you again for joining.
Okay, thank you, April.
You're welcome. See ya.
Bye.